They were the fastest guns in the West, but even the deadliest bounty hunters can't stop the ticking clock. The cast of Sergio Leone's legendary sequel changed movies forever, yet their real-life stories are more shocking than any showdown. Prepare yourself for a nostalgic reunion that reveals the haunting truth behind the faces we loved. One star's final transformation is truly hard to witness. Clint Eastwood as Manco. Born on May 31, 1930, the San Francisco, California native worked for years in television before traveling to Europe to redefine the cinematic cowboy. At the age of 35, Eastwood's portrayal of Manco in 1965's For a Few Dollars More became a monumental cultural touchstone building upon the iconic man with no name archetype. His quiet poncho-wearing, cigar-chewing bounty hunter presented a stark, morally ambiguous depiction of the Western anti-hero that was both captivating and unprecedented. With his signature squint and lethal quick-draw precision, the character completely revolutionized the spaghetti Western genre and cemented Eastwood as an eternal symbol of rugged Hollywood coolness. Despite the character's ruthless, trigger-happy nature and trademark habit of puffing on a cigarillo, Clint Eastwood was actually a softly spoken, intensely health-conscious non-smoker who thoroughly despised the taste of the cigars he was forced to use on set. This stark contrast was a significant part of his personal journey, as he had to endure genuine physical discomfort to maintain the gritty illusion. His early career was also heavily marked by professional struggles and rejection. For years, he found it incredibly difficult to secure leading film roles because studio executives criticized his prominent Adam's apple, his tendency to squint, and his uncharacteristically subdued acting style. Furthermore, he was heavily typecast as the naive, clean-cut cowboy Rowdy Yates on the television series Rawhide. The looming threat of the show's cancellation and his struggle to escape this squeaky clean television image made it deeply frustrating for him to find substantial film work, ultimately forcing him to gamble his career on an obscure European production. Clint Eastwood went on to conquer Hollywood, expanding his career into one of the most prolific and celebrated in cinema history, earning multiple Academy Awards as both a director and producer for masterpieces like Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby. Over the decades, he navigated a complex personal life fathering 8 children and even served a term as the mayor of his hometown of Carmel by the Sea, California. At 95, he is recognized as one of the last living legends of the silver screen. Though he has embraced a much more private, quiet life in his later years and rarely makes public appearances, he continued to direct feature films well into his 90s, capping off an extraordinary 7-decade journey from a struggling TV actor to a timeless cinematic icon. Klaus Kinski as Juan Wild. Born on October 18, 1926, in Sopot-free city of Danzig, now Poland, the intensely expressive actor first brought the role of the hunchbacked outlaw Juan Wild to life in Sergio Leone's classic spaghetti western, For a Few Dollars More, 1965. At the age of 38, Kinski's portrayal of the erratic match-striking gang member became a memorable piece of cinema history, offering a perfectly sinister foil for the film's bounty-hunting protagonists. With his striking manic features and explosive on-screen presence, Kinski helped elevate the gritty, brutal aesthetic of the genre, cementing his international reputation as a master of playing unhinged and villainous characters. While Juan Wild was a simmering, volatile antagonist on screen, Klaus Kinski's real-life personality was arguably even more chaotic, contrasting heavily with the traditional notion of an actor simply putting on a performance. Rather than retreating into a quiet, private life, Kinski was notoriously temperamental, egotistical, and prone to terrifying outbursts on set, often violently clashing with directors, crew members, and co-stars. This extreme behavior made him incredibly difficult to work with, creating professional hardships, as many filmmakers simply refused to hire him despite his undeniable talent. He was heavily typecast as madmen, psychopaths, and monsters, a restriction he often resented, and he openly admitted to accepting dozens of low-quality trash film roles purely to finance his lavish lifestyle, frequently viewing acting as a despised chore rather than a celebrated art. Throughout his later years, Kinski continued to work prolifically in European and international cinema, most notably forging a brilliant but highly toxic collaborative relationship with director Werner Herzog on masterpiece films like Aguirre the Wrath of God and Fitzcarraldo. He was married 3 times and had 3 children, Pola Nastasia and Nikolai, who all pursued acting careers. Klaus Kinski passed away at his home in Lagunitas, California, on November 23, 1991, at the age of 65 due to a massive heart attack. Following his death, his ashes were scattered into the Pacific Ocean. His legacy took a decidedly dark and disturbing turn years later. In 2013, his eldest daughter, Pola, published an autobiography accusing him of years of horrific sexual abuse allegations that were subsequently supported by his daughter Nastasia, permanently tarnishing the actor's reputation and casting a horrifying shadow over his cinematic achievements. Lee Van Cleef as Colonel Douglas Mortimer. Born on January 9, 1925 in Somerville, New Jersey, the actor found his definitive breakthrough when he stepped into the boots of Colonel Douglas Mortimer in the legendary 1965 spaghetti western For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 40, Van Cleef's portrayal of the cool, calculating, and pipe-smoking bounty hunter revitalized his stalling career and became a cultural sensation. The role firmly established him as a global superstar and a definitive icon of the Western genre, serving as the perfect, refined foil to Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name. Despite his on-screen persona as a ruthless killer and cold-hearted gunslinger, Lee Van Cleef was known off-screen as a remarkably gentle, quiet, and kind-hearted man, completely contrary to his intimidating appearance. His journey to stardom was fraught with significant professional and personal hardships. For over a decade, he struggled to break out and was heavily typecast as a minor disposable villain in Hollywood due to his sharp, hawk-like facial features. His career was nearly derailed entirely in 1958 by a devastating car crash that severely injured his knee. Doctors told him he would never ride a horse again, leading to a dark period of unemployment, where he struggled with alcoholism and was forced to work as a freelance painter and carpenter just to survive, before Sergio Leone ultimately resurrected his career. Following his European resurgence, Van Cleef capitalized on his spaghetti western fame, cementing his legacy in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, as the villainous Angel Eyes and starring in numerous international action films like Death Rides a Horse and Sabata. He continued acting steadily in genre films and television series throughout the 1970s and 1980s, notably leading the martial arts action show The Master in 1984. Behind the scenes, his personal life was marked by 3 marriages and ongoing struggles with alcohol, which steadily compromised his health in his later years. Van Cleef passed away at his home in Oxnard, California, on December 16, 1989. At the age of 64, succumbing to a heart attack after battling throat cancer. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, where his gravestone fittingly honors his cinematic legacy with the famous inscription, Best of the Bad. Gian Maria Volonté as El Indio. Born on April 9, 1933 in Milan, Italy, the legendary actor brought the menacing El Indio to life in Sergio Leone's 1965 classic For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 32, Volonté's portrayal of the psychopathic marijuana-smoking bandit leader with a haunting musical pocket watch elevated the spaghetti western genre to new heights. His terrifyingly charismatic performance created one of cinema's most unforgettable villains, solidifying the film's massive international success and leaving a lasting cultural impact on how antagonists were depicted in westerns for generations to come. Despite playing a greedy, unprincipled, and ruthless killer on screen, Gian Maria Volonté was in reality a deeply intellectual, principled, and fiercely political left-wing activist. This stark contrast defined his career. He frequently viewed his commercial work in spaghetti westerns as merely a stepping stone to fund his true passion for political theater and socially conscious cinema. Volonté struggled with the commercial constraints of the film industry, and fiercely fought against being typecast as a mere genre villain. His uncompromising political beliefs and notoriously intense, demanding acting methods frequently led to clashes with directors and studios, causing professional friction and leading him to deliberately reject highly lucrative mainstream roles in favor of challenging art house projects. Volonté successfully transitioned away from westerns to become the defining face of Italian political cinema throughout the 1970s and 1980s, winning international acclaim for masterpieces like Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion and Christ Stopped at Eboli. He remained deeply dedicated to his craft and activism until his final days. Gian Maria Volonté passed away suddenly on December 6, 1994, at the age of 61, suffering a fatal heart attack in Florina, Greece, while on set filming Theo Angelopoulos's Ulysses Gaze. Following his untimely death in accordance with his specific wishes, he was laid to rest under a sail in a modest windswept cemetery on the Sardinian island of La Maddalena, cementing his legacy as one of Europe's most uncompromising and brilliant actors. Mario Brega as Nino. Born on March 25, 1923, the Rome, Italy native first brought Nino to life in Sergio Leone's classic 1965 spaghetti western, For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 42, Brega's portrayal of the brutish, towering henchman in El Indio's ruthless gang became a cultural touchstone within the genre, offering a quintessential depiction of cinematic villainy that was both physically imposing and unforgettable. Alongside his appearances throughout the Dollars trilogy, his hulking screen presence and rugged features helped define the gritty, morally ambiguous atmosphere of the Italian Western, cementing Nino as one of the most recognizable heavies in film history. Despite the character's violent, silent, and hardened nature, Mario Brega was a highly charismatic, expressive, and deeply humorous man known for his vibrant, working-class Roman charm. This massive contrast was a significant part of his professional journey. Although he possessed a natural gift for comedy, his towering 6'4" stature and former background as a real-life butcher caused him to be heavily typecast early in his career. For years, he struggled to break free from being pigeonholed exclusively as thugs, bandits, and intimidating brutes. This intense typecasting made it difficult for him to find diverse work outside of the action and Western genres, masking his true affable personality behind the grim outlaws he was consistently hired to play. Mario Brega eventually overcame these professional limitations in his later years, achieving widespread acclaim in Italian cinema by fully embracing his comedic talents. Throughout the 1980s, he collaborated frequently with director Carlo Verdone, starring in beloved comedies like Un Sacco Bello and Borotalco, the latter earning him significant praise for showcasing his authentic Roman dialect and lively spirit. He continued acting into the early 1990s before his health began to decline. Brega passed away at his apartment in the Marconi neighborhood of Rome on July 23, 1994, at the age of 71, after suffering a fatal heart attack. His death prompted immediate and widespread tributes across the Italian media, which mourned the loss of a beloved Roman cinematic icon, and he was subsequently laid to rest at the monumental Verano Cemetery. Luigi Pistilli as Groggy, born on July 19, 1929, in Grosseto, Tuscany. Italy, the classically trained actor first brought Groggy to life on the silver screen in Sergio Leone's critically acclaimed spaghetti western, For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 36, Pistilli's portrayal of the ruthless, calculating bandit and right-hand man to El Indio became a cinematic touchstone, offering a gritty depiction of frontier lawlessness that was both menacing and captivating. For audiences around the world, his sharp features and imposing screen presence defined a character that remains a vital piece of the globally celebrated Dollars trilogy. Despite the character's cold-blooded and violent nature, Luigi Pistilli was an intensely sensitive, highly educated stage actor described by those who knew him as a deeply emotional individual, the polar opposite of the ruthless Groggy. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. As a premier interpreter of Bertolt Brecht's theatrical works, He found playing the cynical, hardened criminals of Italian genre cinema to be a stark departure from his artistic roots. His career was also marked by the struggle of being typecast as morally ambiguous villains, which for a period made it difficult for him to escape the shadow of his Western and giallo antagonists. The twilight of his career brought a severe professional sting. A theatrical production of Terence Rattigan's Tosca, in which he was starring, was harshly panned by both audiences and reviewers, a disheartening blow to an actor so devoted to the stage. Luigi Pistilli continued to work in theater, television, and film for decades, taking on a regular role in the popular Italian mafia series The Octopus, and maintaining a commanding presence in European cinema. However, his personal life was fraught with profound tragedy, including the devastating death of his son Daniele in 1989, and a highly publicized bitter breakup with the singer and actress Milva in 1995. Pistilli passed away at his apartment in Milan, Italy on April 21, 1996, at the age of 66 from suicide by hanging following a deep battle with depression. His tragic death was followed by the discovery of a poignant suicide note apologizing to his former partner for recent public remarks, a distressingly abrupt end that occurred just hours before he was scheduled to step on stage for a final theater performance. Mara Krupp as Mary, born on October 26, 1935 in Rome. Italy, the actress first brought the character of Mary to life in Sergio Leone's legendary 1965 spaghetti western For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 29, Krupp's portrayal of the voluptuous and flirtatious hotel manager's wife added a memorable touch of charm and humor to the gritty, dangerous landscape of the Wild West. Though her screen time was relatively brief, her appearance was a significant contribution to the internationally successful film, introducing her to a broader global audience and cementing her place in the golden era of classic Italian cinema. Despite the extroverted, seductive nature of her on-screen character, Mara Krupp was intensely private and possessed a quiet demeanor that contrasted sharply with the bold women she frequently played. This disconnect was a significant part of her personal journey as she navigated an industry that constantly sought to capitalize on her physical appearance rather than her depth as an actress. Her career was marked by the ongoing struggle of being typecast in niche Italian B-movies, ranging from Euro spy thrillers to low-budget comedies, which made it difficult for her to secure substantial multidimensional work. Her involvement in For a Few Dollars More also brought a distinct professional sting. An intimate bed scene filmed between her and Clint Eastwood was famously left on the cutting room floor because director Sergio Leone felt it undermined Eastwood's stoic character, a disheartening blow that erased what could have been a major career-boosting moment. Mara Krupp continued to act in Italian cinema throughout the 1960s and 1970s, taking on roles in various genre films before she quietly stepped away from the industry altogether. Her final credited film role came in the 1978 Italian comedy Le Braghe del Padrone, after which she transitioned out of acting to focus entirely on her personal life, away from the cameras. She has maintained a remarkably low profile over the ensuing decades, deliberately avoiding the modern spotlight and the convention circuits that often attract legacy actors of cult classic films. At 90, she remains fully retired and continues to live a deeply private life, though her brief but iconic foray into the spaghetti western genre continues to be celebrated by film historians and fans around the world. Joseph Egger as Old Prophet. Born on February 22, 1889, in Donauwitz, Styria, Austria-Hungary, the veteran Austrian character actor brought the eccentric Old Prophet to life in Sergio Leone's 1965 spaghetti western For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 76, Egger's portrayal of the crazed, train-hating recluse became a memorable cinematic touchstone, offering a prime example of the quirky, atmospheric supporting characters that define the genre. His scene-stealing rants and comic timing amid the film's gritty violence perfectly complemented the intense performances of the leads, making his brief screen time an unforgettable and iconic piece of international film history. Despite the character's unhinged, isolated, and ragged nature, Joseph Egger was a polished professional, a dedicated family man, and a celebrated music hall comedian, famous for his clever stage act involving tricks with his beard. This stark contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. Whereas the old prophet was a bitter hermit living on the fringes of society, Egger was a well-loved and highly respected stage presence across prestigious theaters in Vienna and Munich. His film career, however, was heavily marked by the struggle of being typecast. From the 1930s onward, his distinctive look and age caused him to be continually pigeonholed into playing eccentric, doddering old men or comedic sidekicks in Austrian Heimat films, making it immensely difficult for him to find substantial dramatic work or break out of supporting character roles. Joseph Egger remained dedicated to his craft and worked steadily as an actor right up to the end of his life, with his role as the old prophet standing as his final on-screen performance. Egger passed away in Gablitz, Lower Austria, on August 29, 1966, at the age of 77 from natural causes. His passing marked a quiet end to a prolific career that spanned nearly 6 decades and over 70 films. Because he died shortly after the initial European releases of the first 2 Leone westerns, a poignant aftermath of his death is that he never lived to witness the massive, enduring global legacy of the Dollars trilogy when it finally hit American theaters in 1967. Nevertheless, his face and frantic laugh remain permanently immortalized as a legendary fixture of the spaghetti western genre. Aldo Sambrell as Cuchillo, born on February 23, 1931, in the Vallecas district of Madrid, Spain. Alfredo Sanchez Brel, known professionally as Aldo Sambrell, brought his rugged presence to the European cinema landscape. At the age of 34, Sambrell's portrayal of the treacherous knife-wielding henchman Cuchillo in Sergio Leone's 1965 masterpiece For a Few Dollars More became a defining moment in his career. His performance perfectly encapsulated the gritty, morally ambiguous world of the spaghetti western, helping to establish the film's massive international success and cultural impact. As a core member of El Indio's gang, his distinct look and menacing on-screen persona made him one of the genre's most recognizable and enduring faces. Despite the character's vicious, cold-blooded, and violent nature, Aldo Sambrell was in reality vastly different from the outlaws he portrayed. Friends and colleagues described him as a charismatic, highly professional, and warm-hearted man whose early life surprisingly included stints as a professional football player in Mexico and Spain, as well as a singer of traditional rancheras. This stark contrast defined his career trajectory. His sheer effectiveness at playing menacing thugs became a double-edged sword. Sambrell faced heavy typecasting which for decades tethered him almost exclusively to the roles of brutal Mexican bandits and ruthless henchmen. While this ensured steady employment across more than 150 films, it also presented a professional hardship, limiting his opportunities to showcase his broader acting range or secure leading protagonist roles outside the shadow of the quintessential Western villain. Aldo Sambrell continued to work extensively in international cinema for decades, appearing in films like Dr. Zhivago and The Wind and the Lion, and eventually transitioned into directing and producing in his later years. In his personal life, he enjoyed a long marriage to model Candida Lopez Cano, whom he wed in 1964 with legendary director Sergio Leone, standing as his best man. Sambrell passed away at a hospital in Alicante, Spain on July 10, 2010 at the age of 79 from a cerebral infarction stroke after suffering a series of severe strokes the previous month. In a deeply fitting and poetic aftermath to his life, his ashes were scattered at Fort Bravo in the Tabernas Desert of Almeria. The very film sets where he had spent years cementing his cinematic legacy in the iconic westerns that made him famous. Benito Stefanelli as Luke Huey, born on September 2, 1928 in Rome. Lazio, Italy. The versatile stuntman and actor first brought the ruthless outlaw Luke Huey to life in Sergio Leone's seminal 1965 spaghetti western For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 37, Stefanelli's portrayal of the rugged henchman and loyal member of El Indio's gang became a memorable fixture of the film, helping to define the gritty, brutal archetype of the era's antagonists. His imposing screen presence and involvement in the narrative's climactic shootouts contributed heavily to the mounting stakes of the picture, cementing his character's place in a cultural touchstone that forever changed the landscape of the Western genre. Despite frequently playing sadistic lethal thugs and silent gunslingers on screen, Benito Stefanelli was an intelligent, hard-working professional and a highly communicative collaborator behind the scenes. A fluent English speaker, he served as a crucial interpreter between the American stars like Clint Eastwood and the Italian crew, acting as a helpful and indispensable uncredited linchpin for the production, a stark contrast to the ruthless and single-minded Huey. However, his career was marked by the persistent struggle of being typecast as a disposable background villain or outlaw. This strict typecasting made it nearly impossible for him to secure leading roles, and as the golden age of the spaghetti western abruptly ended in the late 1970s, the changing landscape of Italian cinema brought distinct professional hardships, making it increasingly difficult for him to find the steady stream of action-oriented acting and stunt work he had once enjoyed. Stefanelli continued to work in the international film industry for a time, taking on diverse supporting parts in movies like Umberto Lenzi's Iron Master 1983 and Werner Herzog's Cobra Verde 1987, while also serving as a trusted weapons master on numerous European productions until he retired from the screen in 1991. He lived out his later years quietly and out of the public spotlight in his native Italy. Stefanelli passed away in his hometown of Rome on December 18, 1999, at the age of 71 from health complications related to heart disease. His death was followed by a wave of posthumous recognition from genre enthusiasts and film historians who finally brought to light and celebrated his vital uncredited behind-the-scenes translations and stunt coordination that were largely unacknowledged during his lifetime. Luis Rodriguez as Manuel. Born on May 19, 1935, the Barcelona native first brought Manuel to life in Sergio Leone's acclaimed 1965 spaghetti western, For a Few Dollars More. At the age of 30, Rodriguez's portrayal of the rugged and dangerous outlaw in El Indio's gang became a memorable piece of the European Western boom, offering a gritty depiction of the lawless frontier that was both thrilling and culturally significant. His intense screen presence defined a character that remains an essential figure in the cinematic universe of the iconic Dollars trilogy. Despite the character's ruthless and violent nature, Luis Rodriguez was intensely private, soft-spoken, and described by those who worked with him as the polar opposite of Manuel. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. He found playing the deliberately aggressive gunslinger to be a challenge. His career was also marked by the struggle of being typecast as a Western heavy, which for a period made it difficult for him to find work outside of the genre after the peak of the spaghetti Western craze. The end of the European Western boom itself brought a professional sting. Many supporting actors were not formally notified when studio contracts dried up, learning about the industry shift as productions abruptly left Spain, a disheartening end to a prolific cinematic journey. Luis Rodriguez continued to work in Spanish film and television for a brief period, though he eventually stepped away from the industry to prioritize his family and remained a very private individual. He transitioned into smaller regional theater roles in Catalonia and largely stayed out of the public eye. Throughout the following decades, he occasionally reflected on his time riding alongside Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef in the deserts of Almeria, but he never sought the lasting fame of his co-stars. At 90, he is living a peaceful and private retirement in his native Spain, far removed from the cinematic shootouts of his youth, but forever cemented in film history. Tomas Blanco as Tucumcari Sheriff. Born on November 10, 1910, in Bilbao, Spain, the prolific actor first brought his stern screen presence to the stage and early Spanish cinema before stepping into the dusty, unforgiving world of Sergio Leone's cinematic West. At the age of 54, Blanco's portrayal of the Tucumcari Sheriff in for a few dollars more, became a memorable part of a cultural touchstone offering a gritty depiction of compromised frontier authority. His performance added a critical layer of cynical realism to the 1965 film, helping to redefine the classic American Western and cementing a spaghetti Western aesthetic that was both thrilling and historically significant. Despite the character's rugged and morally flexible nature, Tomas Blanco was intensely professional, elegant and described by those who knew him as the consummate stage-trained gentleman, the polar opposite of the grizzled figures he so often played. This contrast was a significant part of his personal journey. He found playing coarse, one-dimensional villains to be a creative challenge. His career was also marked by the struggle of being heavily typecast as corrupt sheriffs and harsh military officers, which for a period made it difficult for him to find diverse, nuanced work after the genre's peak. The eventual collapse of the European B-movie boom itself brought a professional sting. As film productions were abruptly canceled and funding dried up, he faced the disheartening reality of navigating an industry that had pigeonholed him, making it hard to secure meaningful roles. Tomas Blanco continued to work in television and film for decades, though he remained a very private individual who kept his personal life out of the public eye. He took on supporting roles in cult classics like the horror film The House That Screamed, 1969, and appeared in numerous Spanish television series such as Estudio Uno throughout the 1970s. After an extensive career encompassing over 140 film credits, his final performance was in the 1983 film Las Autonos Suyas, after which he quietly retired. Blanco passed away in Madrid, Spain on July 16, 1990 at the age of 79 from natural causes. His death was mourned quietly within the Spanish artistic community, and he was respectfully laid to rest in Madrid, leaving behind a lasting legacy as one of the era's most recognizable and hardest-working character actors. As the sun sets on these legendary figures, we are reminded that while faces change, the grit of the frontier remains eternal. Seeing these stars age is a poignant journey through cinematic history, proving that true talent never fades. It only matures. Which of these transformations surprised you the most today? Share your favorite memories of Sergio Leone's masterpiece in the comments below, and do not forget to like this video if you still love this classic.